Welcome to Take the Helm podcast, where we will share stories, experiences, data, and best practices with industry leaders, friends, and dealers. From market conditions to insights, leadership development to tough conversations, take the helm.
Hey everybody, good day. John Green here with Lead Helm. And as always, great information to come your way today. I'm always excited. You guys know I always lead off with I'm excited, but then I have to tell you why. And one of the excitements is always the same thing. Anytime we can talk about how do we sell more vehicles and deliver a great customer experience, really by focusing on our digital doorway, that's exciting by itself because it's a huge opportunity. It continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's a big piece of the excitement. The other piece, I have two more pieces today. Fall is here, right? Which is really cool. You might start this time of year, leaves are changing, customer traffic might be changing. You might be thinking about holidays already a little bit, but the other thing that happens this time of year is this is when we start planning for 2025. The fourth quarter, which starts at the time of this recording, Q4 starts in just a couple days, and it's time for planning. So that's exciting too. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to have a sales department focus on strategic planning for next year. And to be part of that discussion, the third piece of the excitement, right, is Scott Fisher joining today, longtime friend, partner, co-founder of Lead Helm. And Scott, how are you today?
I am doing good. And man, it's that dreaded time of year again when our great CFOs or controllers or whoever we have working for us, if they're tuned in, they're pounding on us right now to start the budget process. And I always say, it's too early. And they always say, no, it's not too early. We need time to refine our budget process. So I'm excited to talk about it because I think as I look back, I can give a lot of credit to our financial team, to our CFO, Kimberly Haskins, her team, all the dealership, controllers. They were all really tuned in on the budget process, and I think it was something we did a great job with.
Well, I would agree, and I think you kind of dread it, but it's an exciting time, right? Because typically planning, there's some degree of optimism that comes with there, right? Clean slate next year. How are we going to do it? What are we going to do differently? And sometimes we have to temper that enthusiasm a little and pull it back to make really a realistic budget. Right? Because it's easy to put anything on paper and make business look great. Okay, but the problem is if we start to put that all on paper and then we start to build our team and our expenses and our strategies behind overinflated numbers, we're really doing ourselves a disservice. So we want to make sure that we're accurate on these things. And when we talk about this, right, let's just talk about where this whole thing starts, right? Because this was always a big annual process, right? So we still have 2 Harley stores in the family. That process is going to start next month for them. When we had the multiple stores, October would start this. And just talk us back through that a little bit, Scott. If I'm a dealer today and I'm not used to doing this every single year, where do we start, right? What are some things to start to set the stage if I'm a dealer thinking about how to go through this right now?
Yeah. Well, first off, I think that all the listeners out there, everyone in this industry, one thing they should really take away from this is a real reflection point. Okay, so we've gone through most of the year. Most dealers are, quite frankly, at the end of their real the volume. They're going into fourth quarter. In Florida, no. In some of the other areas of the country, they're not. But it's a real reflection point because you actually, in order to budget properly, you have to really look at data. Data is so important. What did I do this year? There's so many areas to look at. But without a question of doubt, as old Uncle Ed used to always say, money's in the metal. All right. We're going to work on everything. We're going to make everything work good. But we got to figure out how to sell motorcycles. We got to figure out how to sell more motorcycles. So I know that our real first reflection point was, how did we do this year? How did we do with our motorcycle sales? And did we already have a budget, and how close were we to that budget? The other reflection point is, while we're looking at the data of our motorcycle sales, how do we do from a net profit standpoint? And did we hit our net profit? Because part of the whole budgeting process isn't just unit volume, but is also profitability in units. Where does profitability come from? Which opens up a whole nother door, the finance and insurance, new versus used. There's so much to uncover in the industry, and it changes from market to market. That's why everything is important, that you look at your data and look at what your expectations are, or what your needs are. The reality of it is, we do this same process when we go into an acquisition. We get the dealer's history, and we look at what our performance is from a sales standpoint, and we create a budget, around history. So I think, John, what's important is, I'll kind of stop there, is that data is so important to look at, and unit volume drives everything. Unit volume gives us the ability to determine what our parts sales should be, what our service sales should be. And once you look at the top line, then you got all this additional work to do to talk about staffing. How are we going to staff for sales? How are we going to staff for parts? And then we got to look at inventory. There's a lot to it. That's why you start October 1st, because you can't do this work in one week, one day, 1 week, maybe not even 1 month. Because guess what? As soon as somebody thinks they have it down, if you got a good team, they'll challenge the numbers. And that's the beauty, is the challenging is making this process a real reflection point about what we did and what we could have done and what is possible. It's the real beauty of being in business. It's what it takes to be a real entrepreneur, is to really understand that. So
Yeah.
So and things keep changing. The markets keep changing. We went through this, mostly new and 2-to-1 new to used, and now through COVID, the new sold out, and we got 2-to-1 used to new, and now look what we're doing. We're sitting there trying to figure out how to get rid of used motorcycles. We've got a volume of used motorcycles, and we have a volume of new. So it just changes, and reflection and history and what's happening in the industry is all part of this process.
Oh, yes. So the data piece, right? We always say, right, let data guide you, let data drive your decision. So for dealers that have access and they have good tracking on these things, this is an easier exercise, right? Dealers that may not have that, right? I'd encourage you really to look at some national average numbers and some benchmark performance numbers. They're available from a variety of different resources. Because we get so much insight from that historical data. But what you said is really, really important. If we start with a unit number, it can drive everything, because then we can start to break that down on a per unit sold basis. What should I sell per unit sold in parts? What should I sell in general merchandise? What should I sell on a pro shop? What should I sell in service, right? All on a per unit sold basis. What should my F&I be per unit sold? So we have that piece of it. That starts to drive revenues and profitability in the other store, in the other departments. Right. And then we can start to put some margin considerations, and then we layer in some expense pieces, and we're gradually working this thing down to an anticipated net. But I think what you said, and why the timing, and we give it a 90-day window, right? One, because once December starts, nobody wants to be doing this anyway. The stores are busy. It's holiday time. We got holiday parties. We got just closures. We can't get this done in December, so it's a bit naive to think we can do that. So that's why we start early. And we have to make some assumptions. Your part about the challenge, the initial draft, I think is critical. A good team will do that. Say this, I took my historical information. I believe we can do this based on these assumptions. I'm going to have the inventory. I've got a different marketing strategy. I had a competitor come in or come out of the market. My market is going through an economic growth or retraction standpoint. I've added a new line to the store. All those assumptions we build in, and then this budget needs to be presented to the leadership team and defended. And through that exercise and back and forth and reworking, we end up with, okay, this is what we believe based on our assumptions, validating those assumptions and our historical data. This is what we think we can achieve. And then, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you're just, you're refreshing the memories. But look, one of the real beauties of this is the reflection, the education, the real understanding of the performance we had and the performance we could have or we should have. And what I remember most, which I think was very dynamic, was how when you bring your staff together, I'm talking about your leadership team, your department managers, and you go through this process, yes, they're working on their department for some time, but at some point in time, it all comes together in specific full budget process, and the team has a discussion on that. And I was always smiling and loved how department managers would hold other department managers accountable to their performance or challenge their performance. They would challenge the performance of the department managers. That is one of the greatest things about this budget process is how you bring your team together and you educate them on creating performance, creating real strategy, creating a strategic plan for the dealership. And why do you want to finish by December 1st? Well, you need a whole month to then prepare your department managers for what's in it for them next year. That's when we begin the whole process of incentive programs, budget, hitting these budgets. We got the team excited about next year. We got them ready to roll for next year. So it's important. The timing is so important, and we're not unique at this. Every really big organization starts this process like this.
Yeah. Well, I keep making notes here. We're going off script, which is great. The thing that you said is interesting, right? If all of a sudden we finish our budget right before Christmas, as an example, and you've decided in next year's budget that you're going to have a big increase in your finance number or unit volume or a big margin change. Okay, my question always was, what are you going to change behaviorally and procedurally in the next 10 days that miraculously is going to make these numbers completely different than the numbers you've been producing the whole year? So then you're into those challenges, the tactics around how do we execute system-wise to be able to achieve those. And because if think about if we don't do this, if we don't have that target and we don't have that direction, we don't have those goals, you're just reacting to the business, right? There's a great old adage, if you don't know where you're going, you're already there.
Right.
Well, I don't want to be here. I want to be to the next level, but I got to have a plan. I got to get the buy-in by the team to drive it.
So let me comment on something there, which I think is really important. And it comes back to the first part of our conversation, which the money's in the middle. There is good data, whether you have it yourself or whether you go out and get it from resources in our industry. But once we go through the new bike and used bike, the unit volume, one of the most critical things is the sales process. What's it take to achieve this? There's so much it takes to achieve this. And, we'll just talk about the sales staff for now, but there's marketing, there's inventory, there's everything else. But the sales staff is so important. And the reason why it's so important is there has to be an alignment, a budget around, if I'm going to sell 100 motorcycles, how many customers do I need to do that? I know in our business, John, we had an average of about 10% delivery on our traffic log. So if you're going to sell 100 motorcycles, you needed 1,000 customers. If you had 1,000 customers, how many salesmen did you need? It's really simple. It's not real complex. Most people don't look at it that way. But we used to always tell our sales managers, look, you're never going to hit your budget because you don't have enough salespeople. Sales managers need to take ownership of the recruitment, training, and development of a sales team that fits the budget. That's a core responsibility for them. So, I know that sounds maybe I don't know if it sounds off script or not to people listening, but I'm telling you, I've never seen a dealership perform that doesn't have a sales staff that's set up to perform at their budget. And it's one of the key things that we uncover today through Lead Helm is when we go through the demo process with dealers, we uncover that, quite frankly, they're not really ready. Many of them aren't ready even on the front side, the door swing side. So it's very difficult to get them focused on the digital traffic log. So I want to throw that out because, these are the core things that we did really, really well. If it was something that we did really well, we really focused on a traffic log, we really focused on sales staffing, and we really held our sales managers accountable for it. And we even did graphs. We actually did graphs that showed by day how many unit sales there should be, by day how many salespeople there should be. And we held the team accountable daily on staffing. You can't expect to get 30 customers today with 2 salesmen. It takes 3 salespeople to get 30 customers. And guess what? 30 customers aren't walking through the door. So those 3 salesmen got to be working really hard at setting their own appointments and driving. So appointments become a whole nother element. So it's it gets real complex. But that sales side, to me, if you're going to do anything, you got to figure out that budget process around unit volume, a sales team, and staffing. It's so critical.
And that's a segue right into where we're going, because the question to ask once you've determined, okay, I'm going to sell this many vehicles for the year, and you've broken that down ideally by month, then we want to start asking the questions: do we have enough? Enough what? Well, do I have enough traffic? Do I have enough leads? Do I have enough staff? Do I have enough of an advertising spend to drive that traffic? Right? Do I have enough inventory? Okay. And again, if you've gone through the budgeting process, as we suggested, take unit sales and then apply per unit sold numbers for your other departments, you begin to be able to address the do I have enough, not just in sales, but in all the other departments. Okay. So we're going to stay inside of sales, and let's continue the traffic log piece, right? So if I'm just thinking about the floor, okay, we're going to talk about digital in a minute because it's a completely growing variable in our businesses these days. But if we're looking at floor traffic, okay, we need to look historically again. Last year, if you've got a door counter, great. What was my traffic like? How many greets did I have last year? And how many units were we able to deliver last year based on floor traffic? And then say, okay, do I have enough traffic? Do I need to adjust advertising and advertising spend there? That's one of the things. But the math that you just used, I think is important to restate again. Right? So what Scott talked about in a 100-unit goal month, if historically from your traffic log, you have a 10% delivery rate, okay, we're going to take our 100-unit goal and divide it by your delivery percentage. So 100 units divided by 10%, that's 1,000 greets, okay? Then you start to say, boy, do I have enough footfall in my store to get 1,000 greets in a month? And if I believe I have the traffic there, great, that's one check mark. Now, do I have enough salespeople? How many greets can a salesperson get per day? How many days a month does a salesperson work? Okay. Then we start to go through, I need this many bodies on average for the month. We always want to skew higher than the average. Okay. So if it says you need 10 people, you're going to want to have 12 on staff
Well, why
because
is
well, look, we have turnover still, unfortunately. We have people on vacation, we have people that get sick, we have people that get fired, we have all those things. So if we need to average 10 and we only have 10, we're always going to be below the average.
yeah,
And the graph thing that you talked about, Scott, it's amazing. I still believe, for doing this for a long time, even from going back 20 some years, and when I was learning this business from Ed Lemko, he would always hammer on the fact that power sports dealerships don't have enough salespeople. Nothing's changed in 20 years. Power sports dealerships still don't have enough salespeople. Because the amazing thing that happens, as soon as you put more salespeople on the floor, you automatically have more traffic.
absolutely.
Now, that doesn't mean more people came through your front door. Maybe you got some more because of prospecting and follow-up and appointments and so forth. But all we're saying, salespeople on the floor with GREET mandates, minimums, we record more of that footfall into the traffic log. Now we've got people in the
Yes.
log that we can start to follow up with and nurture and so forth. So this is a big exercise on that part.
Yeah, I think what's important, John, when you talk about the number of salespeople, that we can reserve a lot of these comments for another session for sales training. But one of the key things that most dealers don't do, and we always did, was we always measured performance of salespeople by the amount of customers they'd get in the traffic log. And you had to do that. You had to provide a level of performance and reward for salespeople who achieved the traffic that is needed for the dealership. So 10 salespeople getting 5 or 6 customers a day is 50, 60 customers. That might be the number we were targeting for. They're not going to get it from just people driving off the street. They're going to all of a sudden learn what, quite frankly, Sam Dantzler talks about all the time, which is transactions. They're going to start hanging out at the service department. They're going to start hanging out at the parts department. They're going to be happy when there's a bike night, because all these things drive traffic that allow them to put people in traffic. A lot of times we don't think about it that way. We don't think that every act a dealership is doing should be an opportunity for salespeople to find customers that they can put in the traffic log. Now, obviously great salespeople are going to question everybody in the traffic log. I used to love the fact that we used to do it by hand forever. I think we should still do it by hand. I think that the sales manager should have to calculate everything by hand at the end of the day. I think you should have to highlight through every one of them. Okay, I think it should be done that way still, because I think that there's a magic to that. To them, salespeople are just so critical, and it's a salesman's job. It's a sales manager's job to make the salesman successful. So this whole traffic log issue is very complex when it comes to the activities that have to make it work. It's not just about hiring more salespeople. It's what do you do with more salespeople?
I think I agree with that, Scott. And I think one common, I will call it a little bit of a misstep potentially, is we see a lot of times sales managers, general managers, they want to use the traffic log as kind of a whip, right? They want to expose weakness. They want to call out salespeople. And what happens in that environment? Yes, I want accountability, but as soon as we only use the traffic log as a disciplinary tool, nobody wants to fill out the traffic log. They're not going to be honest in the log. I don't care what the data is. I want honest data, because if you give me honest data, now as your manager, I can start to coach you, right? We train the team. We coach the individual based on the data and their individual performance. So that's the true value of the log, in addition to staffing and how do we find these in a save a deal and move them down the process. It is to continually develop the people that we have. And I think we don't do that enough. And that's part of the reason why we continue to see these massive turnover percentages, particularly in the sales departments. We hire, we don't necessarily train them enough up front, and we don't have the ongoing coaching to make them successful. And they go somewhere else. They go somewhere else.
Right. If you think about how all of us can belly up to the bar and have a discussion about something in business, and all of a sudden that discussion turns into this think tank, and we're coming up with all these ideas, just one-on-one with each other. That's what a sales manager has to do with a salesman all the time, not obviously at the bar, but at their desk. It has to help salespeople think through the process. So I know that we're kind of stuck on that sales process, but it's worth the time to talk about this so that maybe it generates interest and questions from the audience. But it's the critical element. I mean, too often today, you go into a dealership and no one will help you. I mean, it's terrible. You walk around a dealership, there's millions of dollars of inventory, and there's nobody to help. Let me tell you, in our dealerships, because salespeople got paid off of getting traffic in the traffic log, customers always got helped. Customers always got attention. So it's not a real ingenious idea, but it works.
Actually saying hi and trying to honestly help people that walk in. It shouldn't be, but that's a different day. So right back to we're planning. I've got a unit goal. We'll just stay with 100 units for a month just to say that. And now I understand, okay, to do that, I know I've got to have 1,000 greets. That was the way that we would always do it. And it's still sound today. But the new wrinkle in this piece is, what about the digital traffic, right? How many, because this is a huge component. Okay, if I'm going to sell 100 motorcycles in the month, 100 vehicles in the month, how many of those are going to come from the digital doorway versus the front door? And what I really want to spend a few minutes on here is everything we just talked about with traffic log and adherence to the log and insights from the log and the scrutiny from the log. We have to apply that same level of intensity to a digital traffic log. It's a different thing. The digital sales process is different than the floor process. Different KPIs need a different log. Different process, different people, different skill set. Different people, different skill set. I said that twice for a reason. So this is a big one. So the first thing, right, we talk about digital traffic log. I'll show you at the end. You're going to have the ability to go and find all of these resources from Lead available to you at no charge. But the first question I'd ask, Scott, if you're going to sell 100 units, what percentage of those do you think are going to initiate and become an appointment through the digital side? 10%, 50%?
Well, all I can tell you is what my experience has been, okay? And, the reason why, of course, we're in the digital business is because as we had our many stores across the country, we found ourselves really challenged with traffic. If you think before COVID, there was a time frame before COVID, the 5 years before COVID, where, traffic in the motorcycle stores were slowing down. Harley sales were more complicated to achieve. And, we literally had, our team said, hey, this digital thing is an opportunity for us. It transitioned into having Aaron Barney, who is one of the co-founders of Lead Helm, running a digital office himself. And we did that strictly we needed more appointments on the board. We were very focused on appointments. Get appointments, get appointments, get appointments. Well, the only place we could get appointments prior to digital was the salespeople calling back their customers and making appointments. And that's still an absolute process that has to happen. But when we started the digital process with Aaron, a couple things was kind of amazing. One, the number of appointments that were coming from digital, but the most amazing thing was the quality of that appointment was staggering. So you ask the question, what percentage does it take? You and I debate on this sometimes. To me, I want to staff my sales department like I always have, and digital is a new resource like marketing that just drives good traffic into the dealership. That's why we think it should never be with the salespeople and it should always be separate. We think that the separate, BDC departments, whatever they are, drive that traffic into the store. So I don't know that we have enough time. We've had enough time to actually have real data to know what the traffic difference is. But the one thing we know for sure is I would bet almost every customer walking through the door, whether it's a digital appointment or a walk-in customer, started their journey online. And if you want to increase your traffic, you better increase your digital performance.
Well, yes.
I know
Well,
I didn't
because
answer. I know you didn't answer your question because I don't know that I'm convinced what it is yet. I just know that it's a resource you can't do without, and your salespeople should be rewarded from a digital process, not have to work the digital process. I believe that.
Totally agree. And look, Scott, we see it, right? This is the space that we live in 100% of our time now. This process and the interaction between the digital space and the physical space. And if we do a good job with digital, and again, I am a strong proponent of dedicated people for the digital side because response times are important. We tend to underestimate the amount of time and effort required to nurture that customer to a set and a kept appointment. But if we do it well over there, it drives traffic. Some of that traffic will convert to sales. But even if they don't buy, now I've got them in the store. They're a bit captive. I can make a great impression. I can earn their business. Maybe they pick up something in one of the other departments and now I've got an additional transaction. So digital feeds the sales side. I want the salespeople to focus on how do I create an unbelievable experience when that digital appointment shows up. Focus on that. Let digital work on setting the appointment, and then we transfer that information over there.
Yeah.
So just some quick math, okay? We'll go back to a 30% number because we see fairly regularly dealers, lead helm clients that are selling 30% of their annual or their monthly volume is coming through the digital doorway and working that process correctly. So let's just use that. So the same month we said we're going to sell 100. I believe 30% of those need to come out of my digital space. Okay, great. So now I got to sell 30 vehicles that initiated through my digital doorway. Excellent. How many leads do you need to do that? Now we're back to, do I have enough? Do you have enough leads? Well, I don't know. Okay. Well, how many leads does it take to sell one vehicle? I'm not quite sure. We need to have this kind of data. So I'll run through this. This is based on our benchmarks at Lead Helm. Okay. The first place it starts is you need to understand your website traffic. Okay. Because leads come from website traffic. We get some leads from OEMs, that's fine. But most of the time, the vast majority are coming through your website visitors. And they go in there and they fill out a lead form of some type. So how many website visitors do you get? And then of those, how many leads do you get? So we start to get a percentage. I'm using 2% right now. 2% of the people who visit your website will raise their hand and give you information that you can use to communicate back to them. Okay. And then I'm going to use from those leads, I'm going to set an appointment with 40% of them. 70% of those are going to keep, and I'm going to sell to 40% that kept their appointments. Okay. 40, 70, 40 benchmarks. We have dealers achieve them. That's why they're benchmarks. So if we go backwards on that, we've got 30 units to sell for the month. I just did a little quick math. You're going to need to sell 30 units through digital. You're going to need 15,000 website visitors for the month. Okay. 2% of them are going to become a lead. So that gives me 300 leads. Okay. Now, how many leads can one person work? 300 is about the limit from our experience. Okay. And right, one person in your store, if you're open 7 days a week, then you've got other questions. Who handles the leads in days off and so on and so forth. But you need 300 leads. From there, we should end up with 120 set appointments. And from there, we should have 84 kept appointments, and our deliveries on those 84 should be 33 motorcycles. So we actually came a little bit over our 30 unit goal. But if you're not able to take yourself through this exercise, the mathematical side of it, how do we know how much to spend on digital advertising? How do I know how many people I need to handle these leads? How do I know how many appointments I should expect over the course of a month or an annual basis coming in enthusiastically ready to buy a motorcycle? So that the digital traffic log, that analysis that we just talked about, this is my request, my challenge to the audience out there. Please use a digital traffic log. You'll get a free one at the end of this if you want to use ours, but something to build digital into your 2025 plan, right? And that traffic log that we'll share with you has areas for all of this data that we're talking about, from website traffic through leads, through set, through kept, through delivered. And you can plug that in and you can start to understand what needs to happen on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to drive that. So you can hit the 25 or 30 or 35% of your total unit sales from digital. So Scott, how do you see that with you're working with the two Harley stores out west, and digital's a big focus for them. I know that, we work with them.
Yeah, it's a huge focus. And look, I think, it's probably been a broken record for as long as I can remember from our old Uncle Ed. I always have to bring up Uncle Ed's name because, I think that many of us out there can thank Ed for helping us become successful as we have, because he was so brutal about some of the basic things. And one of the basic thing is that you gotta know the traffic, and you gotta understand the traffic, and you gotta work the sales team with the traffic. And the challenge I think that we see today with digital is they don't know the traffic. Okay, the first thing you said is, what's the web traffic and how many of them raise their hand? They don't know what that is. So, my first challenge to anybody is know the traffic, put something in place to understand the floor traffic and the digital traffic. But look, I think that the critical thing about this discussion is, as a dealer principal or a general manager, the most important thing that I can do every day is see if we're on track with traffic, with the amount of ups in the store, what the traffic log looks like. I mean, if I pay attention to that one item, it makes a significant difference in the performance of our business. It creates a level of accountability for salespeople, for sales managers, for F&I people that's just unbelievable. And that's how we achieve the results that we want to achieve. So I said before, I think that a good structured sales department loves a real structured business development center, because that you'll see in every store that's got a good business development center that the best salespeople will be standing at the door of the BDC department wanting the next up. You cannot let salespeople rotate through the digital. You just cannot do it. We have proven that it does not work. You have to have dedicated people handle the digital side. And if you do, the investment in those people is going to pay in spades, because there's just going to be a lot more traffic, good traffic generated. And pretty soon, the sales team is going to love the BDC department, because they're going to get fed great business from the BDC department. And, when we talk about when you talk about the numbers of digital, John, about the percentage of appointments and what percentage of the appointments purchase, can you even imagine what it would be like if the sales team could literally have everybody who walked through the front door would make an appointment, 40% of them would make an appointment to come back in the store? I mean, it wouldn't happen. But on digital, 40% of the people that raised their hand actually made an appointment to come in the store. I mean, you just got to look at the numbers. I mean, I mean, it's frustrating to me that there's an opportunity out here for dealerships to really move the needle. But it takes a lot of work. It's not easy. It's not easy to run that sales department, and it's not easy to run that digital department. But it's where the money's at. It's how we move the metal. So, there's a lot to talk about here, and it'd be fun for us to have a dedicated sales process discussion for later podcasts. But there's so much in this, and we'd love to invite people like Sean Delaney, other great general managers that understand this process.
Yeah.
And just one last thing. You asked me a question about our current stores. Look, we're challenged like everybody else is by everything, by the human systems, by the people, by the turnover. Everything is. We still have that challenge like everyone else does. And I will tell you that we have gone from full BDC back to people working in the store, doing round robin, back. We've gone back and forth. There's just no question the data completely shows us two things. There's more customers that make appointment from digital when it's done by a separate BDC department. And number two, the cost of achieving that is by far less money than having your salespeople miss deals, because that's what they do. Salespeople cannot answer a digital lead in 5 minutes. Okay, a BDC department will answer that call in 5 minutes. If you don't answer that call in 5 minutes, that customer is calling some other dealership or doing a lead to another dealership. So it's just so important.
It's critical, Scott, because that customer is more often than not putting in a lead to multiple dealerships. So whoever gets to them first, whoever gets to them the best, and whoever stays with them the longest wins, because the battle for customers is increasingly being fought online. Customers do a lot of research. They research brand, they research OEM, they research segments, they look at blogs, they go to forums, they're doing all that stuff. And then they say, okay, I know what I want. And they start looking at dealership websites, and they're going to look at review sites, and they're starting to narrow down who do I want to talk to. And then they're going to say, okay, I have 3, I'm going to send out leads to all 3. But in their mind, what they know, they want to go to one store.
That's right.
Right. So we got to win them, because once we get them in the store, they're not necessarily captive, but now I've got them in the environment. They can meet the family. They can feel the energy. They can feel the culture of the store, all the cool stuff we can do in person, but we got to win them online. And to do that, we got to have the people, and we got to do it fast. So I think this rolls into, right, do we have enough? So we talked about floor traffic. Do we have enough leads to achieve our goals that we have? Do we have enough staff? What we just went through really allows you to see clearly how many bodies you need in each of these spaces. And as we talk about the importance of digital, I'm not necessarily saying you need to add overall headcount to your sales department. I'm saying it's prudent right now to really think hard about how we want to allocate those bodies. Maybe we need 1 or 2 fewer on the sales floor, and those move over into our internet area. It's that important. So you may not need to increase overall headcount. You just might need to allocate them differently between the digital and the physical space. So big insight there.
I think what dealers would find out if they did that they would begin to work the salespeople at a much harder pace than they're used to, because you would have a BDC department making appointments. Appointments take time. They take preparation. It's not just making an appointment and a guy just shows up. I mean, a salesperson has to understand what that customer is coming in for, what the BDC department has already had conversation. And then when you have an appointment, you're already programmed to give the customer a tour of the store, or show the products, all those things. So what we would see for sure is a well-structured BDC department. When you took salespeople off the floor to service that BDC, those salespeople that are still on the floor would be busy with higher quality traffic, and you would need to add more salespeople because of it. And that would be a beautiful thing to happen. If that happened, it'd be the greatest thing that a dealership could experience.
I agree, Scott. And again, I'm not even going to say that we're biased toward digital because of what we do at Lead Helm. The facts are the facts. It continues to grow. Mm-hmm. We have to be in that space if we want to continue to be competitive as dealers out there. So the inventory side, we're not going to go very much into, but again, once you understand these unit numbers and a breakdown between new and used and between certain segments, then you can start to have your inventory plan, right? How many new, how many used, what's going to be my carryover from one model year to the next? What's my seasonality? When should I buy used? When should I offload used? We can't wait until we're in season to go get the product we need, because that's when everybody wants the product and it's more expensive. So creating these plans early allow us to have an inventory strategy as well. We could do a complete discussion on that, which we won't do right now. But this process, right? Historical data, averages from the industry, benchmarks from different resources. What do we want to sell? Unit-wise, use some per unit sold numbers to drive those revenue and staffing projections necessary for your other departments. All that eventually will come down to, here's a full budget with a projected net profit. Okay, present that, defend the assumptions, and once it's finalized, once you get that finalized, now we have to work on action plans. Okay, so I need an action plan by month and by quarter of what each department manager needs to do from a tactical standpoint to achieve those things. Okay, that's another different discussion. But once it's built, the budget stays the budget. But we have to review it monthly and certainly quarterly, and we may need to do a reforecast at that point, because right now we're making projections into the future. At some point, we're going to see how close our actual performance is to what we projected. And if it's right on pace, I don't need to reforecast. If we're over or under pace, then I do need to reforecast, because again, different goals drive different things. Different staff, different inventory, different volume of leads and traffic if I'm going up or down on those numbers. So the reforecast piece is critical there.
So John, let me just say again, as a dealer principal, as a general manager, the budget process gives us the tool to hold our team accountable. The fact is, no one has a crystal ball, and sometimes we may agree that certain bogeys aren't possible. Okay, certain targets that we created, whether it was a sales department, whether it was in F&I, whether it was in service parts, motor clothes, sometimes we would agree with that department manager that we had the wrong target. So we go through a reforecast. What does the reforecast look like? Here's the really important reason why you brought that up, and it's something that when a department manager says, I'm going to have to reforecast, it's easy to change your number. Okay, oh boss, I can't sell that volume of product. I'm going to have to move it down to here. Well, the next question needs to be, then how are you going to reforecast your support staff for that? So when you're not going to sell as much product, you also have to reforecast the marketing, the staffing, when they're working. Those things happen. So, but that's That's managing a business. If we're not going to sell 100 motorcycles, we're going to sell 60. We don't need to have as much people, which costs us money. We all know the number one challenge we have out there is staffing. But you can't have too much staff, when you reforecast. So again, it is all about using budget forecasts to drive a bottom line performance.
No, I think that's a great recap, Scott. And I mentioned some resources as we bring this thing to a close here today. The best resource you can use on this topic, if you want to, go to leadhelm.com, right there, and there's a resources tab, and inside there's a resources library, and everything we talked about. There's a profit calculator, there's a digital traffic log, there's an ebook that lays out the 3 phases of the digital sales process, webinars, podcasts. Sign up for the newsletter at a minimum. That stuff all comes to you for free, and it's just nuggets and best practices that we know, understand, learn, and share on those platforms. So that's the easy way to do it. Okay. If you want a little more one-on-one time, okay, fill out the form that's below and you'll get scheduled. And what we're offering is a 1-hour session with either myself or with Aaron Barney, the other co-founder, where we're going to work with you for an hour purely on sales department strategy, either for right now or particularly looking into next year. And some of that, if you want to, could be help with creating a digital traffic log and helping you start to plan to be successful in this area next year. So go to the website, do that stuff. Anybody that's out there, NPDA, National Power Sports Dealer Association, right? We are proud members and supporters. They have an event coming up in October in Columbus, Ohio called Dealer Connect. It's the 20th through the 22nd of October. Lead Helm will be there with a booth. I also get the privilege of being one of the education presenters. So if you're going to be there, I'll see you. If you're not there, you might think about signing up. Great educators, great networking opportunities, and so forth that'll be there. And I think the last piece from me really is for anybody that's taken the time to watch or listen, kudos to you for continuing to be a student of the business, right? I know it's busy in those stores. We've been in those stores. We've worked all these different positions that we talk about, and always got to take out some time to look at your store from a bit higher altitude because you get different perspective. So I appreciate you spending the time there today. And Scott, do you have any parting comments? And we'll let these fine people get on with the business of the day.
Well, I just think it's a great time of year. Everyone's probably worked really hard throughout the whole year, whether it's been a great year, whether it's been a tough year. Everyone's worked hard, no matter whether it's been successful or not. But it's really a reflection time, and it's an opportunity to get excited about the new year. And excited means, what do I got to do? What do I have to do in order to have the type of performance I need to support the financial performance of the store? And, this should be a very motivating time for your team. Pulling this together, educating your team, pulling your team together so that you have a clear strategy and plan for performance. And I just challenge you to do that because it's really an exciting time. And when you're reflecting, you're looking at history and you're visioning what could be, and that's very important in building a great business. So appreciate the opportunity of being here today. And we have this process happening. Tomorrow we start that process in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. That whole budgeting process. I get to see the top line of it tomorrow. So I'm on it right now.
Practicing what we preach. That's always a good position from which to speak when we actually do the stuff that we're talking about. So again, thanks everybody. Scott, appreciate your time and wisdom today. It's always great. And for everybody else, have a great day. Thanks again. Leadhelm.com if you need any of these resources. See you next time. Thanks.
Okay.